The world in 2020 seemed to be going to hell in a handbasket. And a lot of Christians ask, what can I possibly do to change the world? We've got some ideas.
Well, folks, 2020 is past and 2021 isn't looking so well. From a prophetic perspective, the Bible talks about three different areas how the end time society would look like. For one, when it deals with mankind, that we would have a love for one's family and fellow man would grow cold and be replaced by a love only for oneself, Matthew 24:12. When it came to the church in the last days, the church would be defined by apathy and a falling away from sound doctrine, Revelation 3.
We're seeing that.
And society would devolve, Jesus said, back into the days of Noah. A day was where only very few righteous people, everybody lived for immorality, Luke 17:26. And Tim, do you think that we're living in that society today?
Well, I think we have gotten to that point, and we're getting more so each and every day. We've witnessed a breakdown of law and order, and so there is lawlessness in our land. And let's face it, as I've shared, even the love of some Christians is growing at least strained as we witness the lawlessness around us. We've seen a rise in violence, and so each man seems to be following the whims of his own heart and not listening to any God-given law. And certainly we have flaunted, shaken our fist at God, as Romans 1 says, and so we're being given over to a totally degenerate heart. Yes, sir, we are reaching that point in our own society very quickly.
We both have college-age children, and one thing that's wonderful about college-age children is they want to take over the world. They want to change, so they have that passion and drive. So what advice would you give our children about, and all of us, because I don't think we outgrow the desire to change the world. Hopefully these prophetic perspectives in some way change the world a little bit. So what advice would you have?
Well, I think sometimes we look at what's happening in Washington or in the great centers of commerce or culture, and we think, well, how can I impact that? How can I change the movies that are coming out of Hollywood that are shaping our culture? How can I impact the media that is driving a narrative in a very ungodly direction? How can I impact what happens at the national government level or even my state government other than voting, which is a Christian responsibility to be engaged in that regard? But then how can I impact? And I've actually had people call me and ask directly. And I guess what I will come back and ask rhetorically to those who are watching today, most of us don't have the ability to impact at that broad a scale.
Oh, yeah.
But there are people whose lives right in our immediate vicinity are in a state of trauma and drama themselves. And are we as Christians impacting individual lives? So I guess I'd ask the question, how many of us have called and said, hey, who are the shut-ins at my church who could use either a meal or just a phone call to provide some encouragement? How many of us have gone to our next door neighbor and said, hey, with all the drama in the world, can I bring you over a dessert and just share with you why I have peace even in the midst of turmoil? Are we impacting lives right around us? Because if you want to change the world, change one heart at a time, beginning obviously with our own, but then those connected to us.
I think you're right. I think we look at the big picture and it overwhelms us. We think, well, we're not powerful enough. We don't have anything ability. I like what the Navy SEALs teach, to live within your 3-foot world. In other words, you can change what's in your little square around you and make a difference there. And enough people do that, it starts changing overall. I would say first, and I think you brought up how we react, is it's us. It starts with us first. First, we need to commit our lives to Jesus Christ. No apathetic living, no just getting by in your Christian life. Really get into it. Be the example that the world can look to and say, hey, there's something different about that person. There's something Christ-like about him. And then we shouldn't be keeping that to ourselves. We should be doing what Jesus told us in Acts 1:8, is to go out and evangelize the world. So I believe if we want to be a change agent in the world, we've got to be the best Christian we could be by doing those three things.
It's a great point you make about being different than the world. So many people right now are caught up. I mean, we have a scene on the screen here about some of the breakdown and the chaos that seems to be reigning in our cities and even in our nation's capital. And so many people's hearts are just churning with frustration or anxiety. Are we as Christians reflecting those kind of attitudes? Or do we have a peace that passes all understanding to others to say, Nathan, what is it about you? In the midst of all this turmoil, you've got peace. And you say, well, let me just tell you,
Absolutely.
what is the source of my peace? So do we live and manifest lives that are motivated differently? You know, Paul lived in an era when he saw the world as it was. He wrote about it, and yet he was motivated and inspired by his love of Christ, his anticipation of what awaited him in glory or the Lord's soon return. And so he was never at a loss for joy and a willingness to share in spite of circumstances.
Absolutely. And a lot of times too, we feel like we have to change the whole world, but sometimes the Lord gives us our families as our mission field. So I think that too, if you want to change the world, make sure that Jesus is the Lord of your family. He's the center of the attention. Our marriages too, we need to get right with our spouses, because a lot of times bad marriages is a bad example to the world. And then we need to get rid of the evil influences our family, bad music, pornography, throw out the trash, live a good life. I mean, you're starting kind of in how Jesus said in that Great Commission, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Start with yourself and then move to your family and then move to your community.
Limiting sometimes the technology that brings in bad influences, surely.
And so, we start with ours and we move out into those bigger circles as our influence grows.
Well, we hope that we have been an encouragement to you, maybe a challenge, but even in an era like this, if you want to change the world, start at home, start in your neighborhood, in your community, and you will be amazed at the impact that you can have in individual lives and the multiplying effect that can have for the world at large.